How to Fix a Pageant. My name is Dani Walker, and today we're going to be talking about the recent New York Times documentary called How to Fix a Pageant. And it's all about, in general, the history of the Miss USA and Miss Universe organizations, but also there is a focus, as you would guess from the title, on Crystle Stewart's ownership of the franchise for her 2 years and allegations of sexual assault. I think that when documentaries like this come out in pageantry, in the pageant community, there's two sides to it. You know, there's the side of it where people want to tune in because they're like, ooh, what's the tea, okay? But then for those of us who really love pageantry, we're also like, oh gosh, I hope that this doesn't really damage the legacy of pageantry or feed into stereotypes. I will say overall, I do think that this documentary, if you haven't yet seen it, honestly, just go watch it if you're interested in watching it. I don't think there's really gonna be too many spoilers here, but I do think that they were pretty fair overall. It didn't seem like they were trying to push a particular narrative. We did get to see different sides and different opinions of things, so I thought that was interesting. Now, if you followed my coverage of everything that was happening during R'Bonney's year when all the allegations came out about rigging and sexual assault actually from the 2021 year, if you were following that, I don't think there was that much in the documentary that would have been new news to you if you already watched my other episodes. So I don't feel like there were any bombshells that were really dropped in this documentary. This was more so for people, I would say, who weren't following along at the time. People were like, oh, maybe I didn't know that that was going on. Oh, you know, let me look into this. I'll mention a couple things though that I'm not sure that I touched on in my episodes because it's been a year, was that some of the directors at the time of Crystle Stewart being the president of Miss USA, they felt that they were, I guess, like highly encouraged to open Miss Academies in their states. They felt pressured in a way, they said. And so that was kind of something that the New York Times gathered from them. I also don't remember if I talked about this or if I even realized it, but there were meetings prior to Miss USA about favoritism for R'Bonney, not just at Miss USA, not just post Miss USA. So that's really interesting that that was happening internally, weeks or months before the competition. And I can't remember if I talked about that in my episode. Now, the one thing that I thought was interesting that I really don't think I mentioned was they asked Crystle Stewart about the accounting firm. So if you've watched pageants for years, you'll know that at the end of the show or when the results are about to be announced, they always thank the accounting firm. When we're talking about things like pageants, which are very subjective, and when there's voting, and it's like if you were talking about the Olympics, for example, as you might assume, it is great to have transparency and also to hire a third party outside of your organization that has no invested interest in a particular winner to handle your calculations. They asked Crystle about this because she actually appeared in the documentary, and I was pretty impressed about that because during the whole just firestorm, she kind of seemed to not show up. She wasn't showing up publicly, and they said there was no mention of the accounting firm. Who was the accounting firm? And she was just like, oh, like, I don't really know. We always hired local accounting firms. And then later they kind of had this like add-on thing where Crystle had said, oh, let me get you that information. Apparently she'd forward the information. So the New York Times tried to verify with that accounting firm for R'Bonney's year, did you in fact do the tabulations for Miss USA 2022? And they would not confirm that they did. That's kind of crazy. We don't know if there was actually an official accounting firm, and that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. And they asked her, well, why wasn't that in the script as it always is? She's like, oh, I don't really know. I guess it was just overlooked. Not a great answer when people are speculating that you rigged a competition. Not a good look. I'll say that I think it was quite interesting that she did appear in this with her lawyer though. Her lawyer actually kind of jumped into the documentary at some point and was like, maybe we should say this when she was asked certain questions. And I was impressed that she showed up for it. For the people who think, oh, it was rigged, right? Like the people that's like, that's in my head. I don't care what anybody says. I think it's rigged. And then you have the other group of people that are like, no, R'Bonney won fair and square. There was no favoritism. There was no rigging. There was nothing like that was going on, right? I think that if you watch this documentary, whatever side you were on at the beginning of this documentary, you're not going to change sides after the documentary, especially with Crystle's part in the documentary. So it was interesting to me because I just felt like Crystle wasn't doing herself very many favors. When they would ask questions, she seemed very unaware of a lot. And they were asking some reasonable questions, I felt. She came off as though she just didn't know. A lot of stuff she's like, oh, I just didn't know. I didn't know people felt that way. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about that. I had no idea. For that part of the documentary, I don't feel like she was really doing herself any favors to like convince people, one way or another, if that's what she was even trying to do by appearing there. The questions they were asking, it felt like she should have had answers for them, considering she was in the center of all of this. So to not have answers to some of these questions that seemed pretty reasonable, it was a little bit strange for me personally when I was watching the documentary. Also, huge thing, Taylor, former Miss Michigan USA, okay, winner of Big Brother, amazing, happy for her for that. So glad that she went on and had other things going on for her, very happy. She was kind of one of the contestants at the center of the sexual assault allegation, so she shared her story on there. And I would say just go watch the documentary. It's on Hulu. Listen to it for yourself. And then it wasn't only her, but there were other contestants even prior years that Max had been inappropriate with. And there's emails that document this, and there's video footage, which blew my mind. I was like, why are you sending this spicy videos to contestants and thinking that like this is not going to get out? It was so bold, Max. They asked Max to respond to this, to come on the documentary. He would not show up, but his response was that nobody was sexually assaulted. Take that as you will. I think legally it still is very he said, she said, aside from the emails and video footage, which were highly inappropriate. But in terms of like the Taylor story, it's a little bit he said, she said. Although there were some DMs, there were some messages as well between them, but nothing that would implicate him in, I would say, like a physical assault. So you gotta watch the documentary. One interview I really enjoyed towards the end, though, was from a man, and his name is Jeff Lee. I'm not familiar with who he is. Apparently he's a coach. He said some great things, I think, about pageantry in general. I jotted a couple down. He acknowledged that you might not understand it, and that's coming from an outsider's perspective. Like, you don't have to get pageantry, but there is something to say about the dedication it takes to become a Miss Universe. Totally agree. I feel that way about certain hobbies or sports. You can look at them and you'd be like, I don't get it, I don't understand the appeal, but I do understand and can respect the dedication and what it took to get there. And I feel like in pageantry, oftentimes we don't get that type of respect or sentiment from people, and I wish we would. I'm gonna quote something that Jeff said in relation to pageantry, because I love this, because it's so true in my life, and I know in many other lives. He said, it's relevant because it's a way of democratizing access to fame and opportunity. You said it, Jeff. You literally said it. That is what pageantry did to me. People were like, why do you like pageantry? Why are you still involved? For me, pageantry taught me how to dream. That might not make sense to you if you grew up in, upper middle class or in an affluent background. It just might not make a whole lot of sense. But if you grew up struggling like myself, and honestly, it's still a struggle, especially in this economy, friends. Like, life is not easy, and I'm working my butt off every day. If you grew up struggling, pageantry is a way to use a different skill set to gain that access, as he said, to fame and opportunity. And that is something I appreciate about pageantry, and that is a huge reason why, just as he said, I think it's very, very relevant. It's relevant to young women who want something more for their lives. It's relevant to young women who may not have talents in sports or in entertainment or in the performing arts. What other talents I have? Well, I have communication and confidence, and I can be a great spokesperson, but maybe I don't want to be an actress, maybe I don't want to be a host, whatever it is. Like, pageantry is a way to build a platform, and I feel that I'm a perfect example of that. Look at this channel that's absolutely changed my life, and I'm so grateful for it. And that's one of the main reasons too why I share the information and the skills that I've learned with everyone on YouTube freely. I want to give this help freely. I want to help change your life through pageantry if that's what you're interested in. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but if you want to follow this path, it's why I share these tips. I look back at my life and I look back where I grew up and where I came from. I can even show you on Google Maps. I grew up in this little itty bitty house, and it was next to a used car lot, and it was very unsafe, and I just can remember being in constant fear as a child. I can remember getting burglarized so much, and it was just scary. I never felt safe. I've actually never really lived somewhere where I felt like super safe. That is quite a luxury if you're able to live somewhere like that. Pageantry took me from, from being there and from these super humble beginnings. And like I said, I'm not a millionaire. We're nowhere close, but it still changed my life in a great way, and I still feel very grateful for what I have every single day. And I know it can do that for a lot of other young women, so that's why I think it's still important. I guess the other thing I can mention and note is that the Miss Universe organization was not a part of this documentary. I think that, of course, they're playing it safe. Their lawyers were probably like, maybe we don't make an appearance in a documentary that is going to be talking about rigging allegations, because you never know how they're going to, slice and dice something. You never know how you're going to be portrayed. But like I said, I do feel like the documentary was pretty fair. They were just kind of like, here is the information. Here are people's experiences and stories, and I didn't feel like they were really trying to sway you too much one way or the other, and I appreciated that. It was interesting to watch How to Fix a Pageant. It was a good little downtime break for me. I liked it, and I would recommend check it out if you're interested in it. See it for yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you'll come back for a lot more episodes. Please subscribe and support the channel. I appreciate it.